Hey there folks, so welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are finally going to review the sophomore album from Jillette Johnson called All I Ever See in You Is Me. So after the last album review, I feel that something needs to be clarified here, namely with respect to the folks that are supporting for me and voting for my schedule on Patreon, and a lot of it's a lot of gratitude. Seriously, with YouTube demonetizing the majority of my videos the second they go up, you guys have been a real lifesaver here, and you've introduced me to music that I never would have otherwise covered. Now, some of it's been bad. I'm not sure I'll ever forgive some of you guys for AJR, but a ton of it has been good. And as such, given the rather peculiar state my schedule's in right now, I think it's time we handle some old business and review a record that took a long time to get to the very top of that schedule, and yet, if I had done my homework, I probably would have been pushing for this months ago. Now, for the majority of you who do not know, Jillette Johnson is a New York singer-songwriter who has been attracting some comparisons in the critical community to Fiona Apple, but really her style and instrumentation reminds me a little bit more of a split between Feist's personality and style, Regina Spektor's hyper-detailed writing, Florence Welch's power, and Vienna Tang's knack for slightly off-kilter indie pop production that could lead to phenomenal hooks all the same. Her debut album, Water in a Whale, came out in 2013, and my god, it is something special. Check this out. Full of the sort of indie pop that throws in enough left turns to keep you intrigued, and enough bombast and creativity to really suck you in, and a lot of really great hooks to make sure it stays there. It's a terrific debut album, and it makes all the more sense why she actually turned down an offer to go on The Voice so she could focus more on her career. She's a far more intriguing artist than what that show would have had her make. Now, in any case, she dropped a sophomore album in mid-July of this year, and if it was anything like her debut, I was definitely excited to see where this could fit in. So, okay, what do we get from it? Well, you know, I don't think I should be surprised by this, but there's a part of me that actually is. Because All I Ever See in You Is Me is a sort of sophomore advancement that makes sense from a certain point of view. More refined and supported by a personal favorite producer of mine, tighter construction, more emotionally expressive performances, solid underlying themes supported by good songwriting. This should be a natural step forward for Jillette Johnson, and yet I find myself oddly underwhelmed by this. I mean, it's solid, it's enjoyable in a low-key sort of way, but I have the sinking feeling that Jillette Johnson settled into a bit of a comfort zone on this album that sadly just isn't as interesting or vibrant as her debut, at least for me. It's good for sure, but I don't think it's great here. So okay, how does it happen? Well, I wish there was a simple answer, but let's start off with this easiest area to examine and quantify the songwriting and the themes. Now, if you're expecting some of the wilder imagery that characterized parts of Water in a Whale, well, you get mentions of a robot army on the opening track Bunny, but that isn't really the norm here, as most of the writing opts for a relatively straightforward relationship drama. From the breakup moments of I'm Sorry and Thumbelina, the latter really which ends the album on a sour note, it should have been placed a lot earlier in the track listing. The staving off breakups that will just be waiting in the wings and probably should happen on Not Tonight and In Repair. But where this record gets interesting is in the framing of these stories, because the title of the album, it's not kidding about that larger theme, self-perception. A great many of these songs focus not just on the relationship drama, but how other people's emotions reflect on Johnson's own feelings of self-worth and angst in these relationships. And as much as she does not want this to be the case, that these emotions impact her, she's also aware that it's not really something that she can control or avoid. She's only human. And what's very telling is that she's keenly aware of the positives and the negatives in this, between Bunny's implications of how record executives get artists to sell their integrity, or the possessive nature of her partner on Thumbelina that she actually has to actively buck against. But on the flip side, there's Throw Out Your Mirror, and how just through seeing herself as her friends would see her, she can get out of her own head. But what I like most comes in the two best songs on this album, Love is Blind and the title track. Because in the first case, she's the disinterested party as the ex is actively pursuing her to restore the past, because it's clear that he might be in love with her, and it makes her kind of nervous because there might be enough within her to buck the mature thought that they can't go back to what that was. And then the title track, well, she sees family and a former partner, and she knows what they could do better and what could change in order to make their relationship stronger, only for it to then reflect back on her, and there are just more flaws and things about herself that she's now realizing. I love that she's got the self-awareness to realize and recognize the poignancy here, and how it humanizes the album so damn effectively. But at the same time, as much as I admire this framing, it's not really as gripping as some of her more colorful work before. But okay, why is that the case? It's not like it couldn't be with the right storytelling, right? Well, part of this takes us to the production instrumentation, the former handled by producer favorite of mine, Dave Cobb, who brings his typical rich, organic warmth to the tone of this album with supple bassline, amazingly well mic'd drums, and hints of guitar, mellotron, and arranged strings in order to support the main melodies on the piano. It's burnished, it's very well textured, it's mature, it's tasteful. It reminds me a lot of the similar tones that Dave Cobb has given many other singer-songwriters in alternative country, but on some level, that might be part of the problem. For one, the tones here, they have a much more natural for slower tempos, which means that the hooks here, they don't quite pick up the same dramatic momentum or power, which is something you could also say about some of the vocal arrangements, where the multi-tracking is pretty sparse, and where Johnson, while she's giving a very potent performance, it feels like she has less support than ever in some of these mixes. And yeah, that might intensify some feelings of isolation, which can kind of fit for some of these more introspective ballads, but it also means that any expected sense of bombast is kind of neutered here. And yeah, it fits the more tasteful nature of a lot of the writing, but it doesn't help give the idiosyncrasies that gave Johnson so much personality stand out in comparison. Hell, there's a part of me that feels that this just kind of feels safe, especially from what Dave Cobb has produced in the past. And while we do get some potent moments, the darker liquid melancholy in the tones behind Love Is Blind, the phenomenal drum texture on Throw Out Your Mirror, some beautifully arranged swell in the title track and Not Tonight, but I've got the feeling that they would complement writing that would opt for more intricacy or subtlety, whereas with Johnson, more of that is conveyed through her vocal delivery than a lot of her words, and honestly, that's just not as interesting, at least for me. But as a whole, look, I would be lying to saying if I wasn't somewhat disappointed by this, even while I will tell you that it's good. I think part of it's coming off of the creative high of her debut with its hooks and its more distinct writing style that is stepping in this direction. Again, it feels kind of safe, not quite having the same color or flair. It's certainly very listenable and tasteful and mature, and there's a thematic chord that I like and respect, but the overall sound does not push it past that for me, which means I'm giving it a very solid 7 out of 10 and a recommendation, but I would say you should all check out her debut album, Water in a Whale, first, because I think that's a fair bit stronger and more unique and distinct. Otherwise, it's more on the indie-leaning singer-songwriter side more than alternative country per se, but you know what? If you're curious, it's worth a look regardless. Check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know I took a while getting to this, but as I said, it took a while to get off the schedule. I'm happy I did cover it all the same, because again, that debut was phenomenal. I probably wouldn't have heard it if I hadn't covered this album. But if you want to buy the record, links in the description below, and I got the poll up there for those of you who have heard it. I'm curious what you think about it. Beyond that, if you guys want to get involved in supporting this channel, and let's say I would hopefully cover this back in July when it first came out, you can vote on my schedule on my Patreon right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote, and once per week for the higher tier contributors you get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule depending on your tier. A lot more details right there, but till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.